How's it going, ladies and Bruce? I'm Bobby Sixkilla, and welcome back to the Divine Deception. We have 2 stories down. Mercury stories down. Devon stories down. And we have no, actual legit keys, really, apart from bronze keys. Which, not super helpful, so we're going to jump back into the Hacker Man. Hopefully the second act of the Hacker Man story is a bit more interesting, because the first one was a bit dry. So, you know, you can skip this one. You might miss out on a bit of the story, but it's up to you. Let's jump in. Brute force. Finally, I got a response email from the devil. That had taken quite a bit of time. Well, maybe it wasn't fair to judge him so harshly. He probably had a life or something. The problem was, he was responding. I opened the email and began reading. Again, I have to apologize. At this point, I'm simply not willing to part with the evidence I have. God damn it. We were still on this? This is the problem with these conspiracy nuts. Even if they had some useful shit, they didn't know how to make good on it. This might be a dead end after all. In full honesty, it is sort of the only fully unique card up my sleeve. A trump card, if you will. And while I admire and appreciate your requests, being honest, I've only shared a handful of emails with you. Surprise, surprise, I'm a little paranoid with who I trust. Well, at least he was self-aware. Now, I'm sure that in all likelihood you're exactly who you claim to be. Funnily enough, his paranoia was actually justified this time. But I can't rule out the chances that you're one of God's agents. An angel, if you will. I won't. So for now, at least I think I have to keep that to myself. That said, that doesn't mean I'm not willing to help. Far from it. I'd like to help in any way possible. In any way other than giving the goods, it appeared. For a moment, I wondered if he even had this evidence at all. He could just be bluffing, trying to keep my attention. Only one way to find out. Let me talk a bit about myself. You might be wondering how I get all this information. In truth, you're not the first to reach out to me. There have actually been a number of people who have read by sight and found the truth hidden behind the lies. I like to call these folks my satanic army. It's a bit of a tongue-in-cheek title, but you have to admit, it's a decent bit of good branding. Fair? Well, not that this sort of group should have branding. Anyway, nobody is dedicated enough to actually do anything major on my behalf, and I prefer it that way. I don't want to drag in ordinary people above what they can handle. But they have been doing an excellent job of reporting any suspicious information whenever they find it. And I do a fair amount of investigating myself. I don't want to give too many details in the interest of protecting my privacy. Again, not that I suspect you or anything. To make a long story short, I tried my hand at investigative journalism once upon a time. There was even a world where I might have worked at the Oracle. Unfortunately, that bastard Kane Shea turned me away. For bullshit reasons too. The purpose of this is obvious, because they made my true intents known. Kane couldn't have someone dedicated to finding the truth on the Oracle. That posed too big of a risk, since he was safely in God's pocket. Now, this was just not true. After all, Kane had let JC work at the Oracle just fine. No problem there. But more likely that Kane had accurately pegged this guy for a conspiracy nut and didn't want to give him the job. And now this conspiracy nut was bitter and roping in Kane to his conspiracies. Then again, JC did go missing. I kept reading. Anyways, since I can't put my skills to work at the Oracle, now I put them to work on the website. And I'm a damn good investigative reporter. That's how I got the evidence I mentioned. So, there are some of my bona fides. Now, moving on to more interesting subjects, you said that you've read some of my site. However, given the quantity of my work I put out, I have to imagine you haven't gone over the whole thing. We could try to work out how much you currently know, but I think there's a better option available. Why don't I just give you the few key points to my thesis? Not the vague, emotional marching orders I put on my site. I'm talking brass tacks, the core of my argument against Panthea. That'll put us on even footing, right? Awaiting your response. The devil. Ugh. Well, the devil's proposal made sense to me. It would save me the headache of having to spend more time on that horribly ugly website of his. So explain away, devil. I began typing up my response. Dearest devil, I totally understand your hesitance to show me your critical evidence. In the spirit of total honesty, I must admit it comes as something of a disappointment that I can't see it. But your wisdom in holding these cards close to your chest only redoubles my belief that you are trustworthy. I can only hope that with enough time I will eventually be worthy of receiving your trust and with it, the evidence. As for your story regarding Kane Shea, I can only offer my utmost sympathies. I haven't heard anything positive surrounding that man. I can only conclude that as you surmise, he is in the pocket of something or someone far larger than him. Hopefully it is through the work of determined individuals like ourselves that he will eventually get what's coming to him. I think your proposal about the summary sounds delightful. As you guessed, I haven't had the time to look into much of your work, as I rightfully should. Although I seek to remedy that soon enough, in the meantime highlighting the points you feel particularly relevant would help in our discussions. Thank you for your continual help in this matter. Olaf. And send. Ugh. Man, I didn't like kissing this guy's ass like that. Well, that's life. I tabbed over to the other inbox. Perhaps this conversation would be more fruitful. Turns out I'd gotten my response from Kara, or Chara. I opened it up and began giving it a read. Wait, had we settled on Kara last time? I feel like we settled on Kara last time, not Chara. Yeah, let's go with Kara. That sounds more reasonable. This is green, so apologies. I opened it up and began to give it a read. So, you want to hear some real shit about Olimpo? Well, here's some real examples about how it's all gone to pot now. First up, can we talk about the blatant nepotism going on? I mean, maybe it's something of an industry standard, but that doesn't make it any less fucked up. This shit is straight up dynastical? Dynastical? Yeah, let's go with dynastical. Dynasty styles. Reminds me of a monarchy. I don't think I've ever seen the word dynastical before. In fact, I'm pretty sure that comparison is deliberate. I think the Dysmers would love nothing more than to evoke the monarchy. To think of themselves as royalty. I think they do think of themselves as royalty regardless. To think of Olimpo as their kingdom. To think of their employees as their bloody subjects. Their company was founded by Odin's father. After he passed at an early age, Olimpo was still pretty small time, so his son inheriting and continuing the business didn't seem that bad. But then Odin turned their company into an empire and became proper chuffed at that, beyond a healthy amount. I don't know the details well enough, but I can't imagine their growth was all that legitimate. Anyways, now Odin is practically retired, and the next CEO in line is his oldest son, Art Dysmer. He spent his whole life being taught by Odin how to run a company, learning all the worst lessons. He got a job here right out of college, even without an interview, and climbed the ranks with ease. Textbook case of nepotism. Probably bordering on illegal. Nothing of what she said has been wrong so far, but it was interesting to notice what she wasn't saying. Usually when people lobbied the nepotism argument, Holly Dysmer was the critic's weapon of choice, and yet I hadn't heard a word about him. Curious. What really makes the family's grip on the company so apparent is taking a look at their stock situation. Did you know that 75% of the company's stock is owned by Dysmers? That means a mere 25% is in the hands of the public. Ratios like that are unheard of and reek of paranoia. If that doesn't make it clear that the whole thing is a dodgy family business, then I don't know what will. But okay, maybe you don't give a shit. Let's go monarchies. Dynasties, FTW. Or alternatively, who gives a shit about who's in charge? Gonna be some asshole big shots anyways, right? I think I can somewhat get behind that second response. If it was just the nepotism thing, I wouldn't care either. The problem is, like I said, Art has learned all the worst lessons from Odin. He's been trained like a dog from birth, honed on profit above all else. This has resulted in a robot-like rule from him. Maybe he has some empathy towards his workers. Maybe. But if he does, he certainly doesn't show it. He's prioritised getting the most out of his employees by any means necessary. And at times, that can be carrots. He can make sure that the place is pretty enough to feed his own ego. For the lower ranked employees, he makes sure that they get the respect that they deserve. If only because his employees are a reflection of his. And for the higher ranked employees, he makes sure they get compensated well with salaries and bonuses. If only to keep them loyal and keep them motivated. But that's about where his generosity ends. Because if it's a matter of spending money on unseen affairs that don't seem to really affect the bottom line, he cuts corners like a pro. Because if it's the lower rank employees, then he pays them barely minimum wage, safe in the knowledge that they can be disposed of. Because it's the higher ranked employees, he facilitates a competitive atmosphere amongst his employees to keep them coming to him instead of each other. His only concern is expansion, domination, no matter the cost. If a deadline is to be hit, then people aren't going home until the work is done. If investors are visiting, everyone is on their best behaviour. If the company's value is falling, it's everyone else's problem and they'll be paying for it. Just have a gander at the employees' faces when they leave the building and try spotting a single happy one. Well, I think that last statement might be true of most jobs. That'll sound pretty bad, sure. And nothing particularly outstanding. However, Kara's message still wasn't done. And here's the worst part. Art wants to win no matter what. Win what? That's unclear. Initially, it was to win control of the company over his siblings, but at this point, that war is long come and gone. Art is in charge, and it's not like there's a compelling other company in Panthea that really stands a chance against them. Olimpo's technically a national company, but I haven't heard many plans to expand out in that direction just yet. Maybe just trying to win Odin's respect. But if that's the case, I almost feel really bad for him, because that's probably never going to happen. Whatever the case though, Art wants to win. And just using the overwhelming power his massive company has isn't enough. He's willing to use illegal methods to get ahead as well. Which, like, what the fuck, mate? You're already so much at your disposal, you still feel the need to resort to shitty tactics like that? One quick example, Olimpo basically has a manual on how to properly cheat government taxes. Olimpo does these regular charity drives, saying they want to give back to the community. But in my opinion, it's pretty clearly just for looks. If they really cared about helping the community, they wouldn't be bending over backwards to give as little tax money as possible. How Aja hasn't gone and patched up the loopholes Olimpo's been using to at least get some revenue from the city taxes is beyond me. So yeah, all in all, pretty shitty stuff from Olimpo. You can see why I'm so pissed off about it. Yeah, it sounds like a pretty bad situation. I definitely feel pretty outraged in her situation. Not outraged enough to get to get in a bunch of petty come-upper arguments, but you know, to each their own. Olimpo sucked. I didn't feel the need to fight that. However, there was something that I thought was worth saying. I clicked on the reply button and began drafting up a response. That little defo sounds shitty. I sympathise, I really do. I'd say try to change jobs, but since you've got a pretty high ranking position, I imagine that's not really an option. Props for that, by the way. I mean, in this economy, especially in a job that's so competitive, it's got to be a pretty big achievement. Anyways, there's some decent horror stories, but I mean, yeah, I believe them. And you know why? Because that's pretty much what corporations are like. I mean, I'm not trying to sound disrespectful, even though I definitely am coming off that way, lol. But I don't think Olimpo is especially monstrous or anything because of all that. Most big companies end up being real shitheels. Like you said, it's the natural slide. Survival of the fittest. Or in this case, the meanest. I bet anyone at a similarly sized company would go tit for tat with you on those sorts of stories. For that not to be the case, you have to like do some pretty large scale changes. Which, fucking go for it I guess. But as it stands, it's just one story of a bunch. And on a more practical note, I don't know what you can really do about it. I mean, I imagine if you're this passionate about things, you plan to do something about it eventually. You're not one of those hypocrites that just bitch and moan without any concrete plan to change things. So in that case, what do? You said that Art is playing an illegal game, but really, I didn't hear you actually bring up any illegal acts. Like you talked about the tax cheating thing, but you called it a loophole. Loopholes aren't illegal. Scummy, sure, but that's already a given. It's not like you can get them on a legal issue. So I guess your best backup plan would be rallying for better management. Keep climbing the ladder, supporting good people. Ultimately aim to put someone good in the seat of power. But if things are really as dynastical as you talk about, it seems like that's pretty much impossible as is. You could try killing Art, lol. So yeah, guess I'm just asking if you have any real plans to do something. And if you don't, fair enough I guess. And send. What's my point with all of that? I was sure I had one and I started typing up a response. Whatever. I kept the conversation moving at any rate. Well, I gave my response. Let's see if my other leaders got back to me. Well. A new email. And yes, it's from the devil. Let us see what he has in store for me. Greetings, Olaf. Delightful. It's been a while since I was fully able to rant about the truth of the matter to someone unenlightened. It should be productive for both of us. Now, where to begin? I suppose it's only right to start from the outside. Let us take the perspective of the most docile of sheep. Take an aerial view of Panthea. Even from here, you can see many problems with Panthea. Dissatisfaction among the civilians, organised crime, poverty and extravagance. But you're liable to completely misdiagnose the core issue, added all. After all, from the outside it appears as though the issues stem from the fact that the city is at war with itself. At this point, it's useful to highlight the four principal factions we will be discussing. In Panthea there are four groups who really lord above it all. You have Panthea's government, currently helmed by Governor Aja. You have Panthea's law enforcement, currently helmed by Chief of Police Ariane. You have Panthea's largest company, currently helmed by CEO Art Deismer. And you have Panthea's organised crime, currently helmed by Marduk. These four groups each have their own role. They keep different aspects of the city in check. The police threaten those who operate in the crime-filled slums, with the power to summon and withhold law enforcement at their will. The Duats threaten those who live middle-class urban lives, extorting and harassing whoever they see fit. Olimpo threatens those who live in the upper-class forest, the unyielding power of money and commerce to do whatever they wish. And the government rules above them all, making slow, broad, unstoppable sweeps across the city, with no check but the will of the people. No matter where you are in Panthea, you have to answer to at least one of these organisations, and to an untrained eye it appears as though these four powers are in an unending struggle for power. Let's go through this in a bit more detail. At first you'd think Aja was against them all. You'd certainly think that if you listen to her speeches. She's passed the blame to everybody but herself. She's chastised the police department for being unable to properly rein in the growing threat of the Duets pose. She's classified the Duets as the biggest current threat to peaceful living in Panthea, calling the people to action against them. She's rallied against Olimpo, calling them a damaging entity which hurts the small businesses of Panthea. In fairness, this much makes sense. When you're a politician who's been in power for as long as she has, you have to spread the blame everywhere else. And she certainly hasn't done anything in her run as governor that would outwardly help any of these groups. She hasn't really done anything to hurt any of them either. More on that point later. And so let's move to the police force. Again, we have a group that seemingly has rivalries with all the other factions. Rivalries may be a bit harsh, but their job is to stamp out crime. That means keeping Aja in check, making sure her campaigns and her governance is above board. That means keeping an eye on Olimpo, making sure that there's no corruption or white-collar crime going on over there. And they are certainly meant to be hunting down the Duets, imprisoning them and hindering them at every chance they get. Once again, a faction seemingly opposed with the other three. Then look at Olimpo. Olimpo is a company who has done no favours for the other three factions. They very conspicuously failed to give Aja and her government the slightest bit of praise or support. They are hesitant to employ the police, instead always opting for their private investigators and security staff. And they've very specifically and very publicly made the choice to give no jobs to anyone affiliated with the Duets. So there you have it. Olimpo distances themselves from the other three factions as well, just like the others. Finally, let's take a look at the Duets. They're most obviously at war with the other factions. For rather obvious reasons, the Duets despise the police. Olimpo's stores have been the target of vandalism and looting, and hell, Governor Aja was almost assassinated by a Duet member. The attempt was foiled, and the assassin jailed, but it is clear that the Duets have no love for Aja. One faction against all three. The Duets, Olimpo, Aja's government, the police. They're all at odds with each other. This conflict has led to a lot of problems we see in Panthea. It's what you'd foolishly be misled to believe. However, we're smarter than that. We see the bigger picture. This may be a good time to take a break and grab something to drink. Are you following me so far? The devil. Drink time it is. Man, this devil character sure was making a compelling case. A compelling case against his own point. Like everything he said tracks. That was all a bunch of established facts. Facts that pretty clearly show that the city isn't under one person's control. If that were the case, there sure as shit wouldn't be this much messiness. Where was he going with this? Whatever. I should just respond to keep the conversation moving. I began writing up a response. Dear old devil, thanks for typing all this up. I appreciate the effort you're putting into this. To your question I am following so far, your explanation on how the city operates coincides with my current understanding of Panthea. However, it's the next step that I'm unclear on. The evidence does suggest that the people are on different pages, but that doesn't feel right. Hopefully you can clear up the truth for me. Olaf. After typing that up, I hit the send button. Hopefully the devil was actually going somewhere with all of this. I tabbed back to my Kamapa private messages. Looks like Kara has sent a response. Goody. Let's see what she has to say. Oh wow, real insightful stuff there. You should do stuff about the bad things going on. You think I didn't already know that? For fuck's sake, you literally just laid out why it isn't easy to do things about it. But for whatever it's worth, no, I'm not one of those people who just bitches and moans with no plans to do anything. For whatever it's worth, I'm currently working on that management angle that you talked about. You're right that it's the most straightforward angle. Unfortunately, I have my doubts about how that's going to pan out. There are times I get a sinking feeling I've been putting my eggs in a faulty basket, if you catch my drift. But I gotta stick to my guns. So if you're asking whether or not I have a plan, yeah, I've got a plan. Also, for your information, the taxing isn't the only illegal thing they've done. I consider the loopholes thing basically illegal already, but I digress. You want straight up illegal though? Art Hardcore Insider trades. He trades information about Olimpo's business future decisions for key investments from other big companies. He trades key investments for stock in other companies. He trades stock in other companies for information about their future business decisions. From the sounds of things, he's got a whole web of trades and offers that he carefully manages. Like apparently helming a giant company isn't enough of an advantage for him. To achieve the completely dominating results in the business world that he's been getting, he needs to pull out all the stops. Damn. Okay, now this was juicy. This is the stuff worth my time, but then, how the hell did she know this? If she knew this, surely others would too. I know what you're thinking. How do I even know this? Well damn, she got me dead to rights. Honestly, it was a stroke of luck more than anything else. I was about to come out of the restroom at work, and then I overheard a conversation between Art and Odin. He was discussing the whole thing with him. Possible risks, the rewards, etc. Apparently not even the people he's dealing with know that he's the one behind all this. As far as other companies are concerned, this is the work of a rogue higher-up at Olimpo. And guess what else? Not only do I know all the damning info, I even know where the damning evidence is kept. Art does all the dealings on a burner laptop kept in the office. That's why the laptop was stolen. I went and found it myself. He keeps it in this table drawer. Perks of being at the office, I suppose. Beats the posh atmosphere at any rate. So yeah, I wouldn't call Olimpo just another morally bankrupt company. I mean, I guess I don't doubt other morally bankrupt companies also do this, but at the very least, they are actually doing illegal stuff, and their success can, in some part, be chalked up to some cheating. Not like I care about that aspect of it so much. As far as I'm concerned, all large companies are cheating in the market. Alright, okay. This is what I was talking about. This is some actually interesting information. Some actually useful shit. This was exciting. I hurriedly started drafting up a response. Damn, okay, lol. Yeah, this is a bit more weighty. First things first, sorry about the tone of my last message. And most of my messages thinking back, lol. I was just trying to get info. Curious about your management plan, but if you didn't elaborate, I assume that's for a good reason. But about that laptop, I mean, I'm probably putting out the obvious here, but if you're looking to change Olimpo, isn't that a prime opportunity? Seems like getting your hands on that info would be a big get. Like, that's going to be incriminating. And you clearly already have the hacksaw skills to create a burner laptop. You even know where it is. Just grab it and go. And you get to safety, break open the laptop, then send the info to the police and it's bye-bye out. Well hey, maybe use that info for yourself and rake in the big bucks. I have to give him a response once over I hit send. Again, I was sort of pointing out the obvious, and hopefully it was also moving the conversation forward. And that counted for something. Speaking of conversations moving forward, time to check my email. And hey, there it was. A response from the devil. Ah, Olaf. Let us cut straight to the heart of the matter, shall we? As I've laid out, it appears to the untrained eye that the four factions are at war with each other. But really, the things they levy against each other are ultimately weak. They appear more like token gestures than anything else. Aisha talks about the police being incompetent, but does nothing else. Aisha talks about Olimpo being damaging, but does nothing else. Aisha talks about the duets being a threat, but does nothing else. The police claim to investigate Aisha, but no one on their staff has been arrested. The police claim to investigate Olimpo, but no one on their payroll has been arrested. The police claim to investigate the duets, but the group continues to expand. Olimpo speaks against Aisha, but does nothing else. Olimpo hires their own security investigators, but does nothing else. Olimpo refuses to take on people affiliated with the duets, but does nothing else. The duets are against the police. When was the last time you heard about a cop being killed? The duets are against Olimpo, and how is vandalism and property damages the best the duets can do against them? The duets are against Aisha, but why was the assassination attempt carried out against her foiled? You have to look beyond appearances. At the core, those gestures are merely that. Gestures. When you want to establish where people's true allegiances lie, you have to look far deeper, far closer. You have to examine their actual reasons, actions. Technically speaking, most of the things the devil has brought up until this point have been actions. But I got the gist of what he was saying. So then, what do the actions suggest? Let's start with Governor Aisha. Vocally, she's against the current police force. There is a detail she routinely fails to mention. She's the one who put Ariane in charge and she's her best friend? And her brother was Aisha's husband? It is Panthea's governor that appoints the chief of police. And the chief of police is pretty much the unimpugnable head of the police. This means the head of one faction is directly responsible for appointing the head of the other. Tell me, does it seem remotely conceivable that Aisha could actually be against Ariane considering that? Next, let's look at the police. They haven't found anything on Aisha. They haven't found anything on Olimpo. Big whoop. Maybe they're all clean. But there's one group that's definitely not clean, and that's the duets. The duets are currently unopposed. Do you know how they won the war? Not through bloodshed, or at least not through bloodshed alone. The police ended up cracking down and catching several high-profile members of the Shikome. Most of those members ended up committing suicide in jail. Suicide, sorry. So how then did the Shikome get wiped out like this, while the duets still run amok today? If you ask me, I'd say that the duets sold the Shikome out to the police, that those two groups already had a point of contact. It would explain why the duets are bigger than ever right now. A better explanation than just chalking it up to incompetence. Now onto the duets. Vandalism? Property damage? What is that shit? Low tier stuff for a group like the duets. Complete nonsense. They're bigger than that. They should be at any rate. Duets is standing pretty much in every business, strangling pretty much every business in Panthea with one key exception. Olimpo seems to be doing just fine. Has never been the victim of something major. Is it because Olimpo is so big and powerful that even the duets are worried about rubbing them the wrong way? But Olimpo has pretty clearly disrespected them with the no duet affiliated hires policy. That's not something that would be allowed to pass, even when you're a big shot Olympo. That's not the gangway. The only reason Olympo can get away with shit like that is if there's something more going on between the two groups. Speaking of Olympo, you know how little they pay taxes? You know how much of that is due to the tax loopholes they exploit? Tax loopholes that could easily be patched up if Governor Aja gave half a damn. So why doesn't she? It's not like she could possibly be aware of it. Big company like Olympo, she should be counting on a paycheck from them. Except what if she already has? Look into Aja's campaign finances, it's a whole lot of fog of war going on. A whole lot of major donations from shell organisations. It's hard to follow the money. And above all else, you should always follow the money. I feel pretty confident that Olympo is actually financing Aja's campaigns and maybe giving her a little something on the side. So to recap, on the face of it all, the four factions look opposed. However, in reality, Aja is the one who appointed Ariane, the leader of police. In reality, the police seem to have worked with the duets in the past and aren't reining them in now. In reality, the duets seem to be deliberately targeting everybody but Olympo, and Olympo seems to be financing Aja's campaigns. They're actually all propping each other up. Which brings me to my final point. Did you know that last Wednesday, Aja, Ariane, Marduk, Art, and Kane were all unaccounted for at night time? What if they were going to a monthly in-person meeting to discuss things? A 6-person meeting, the 5 archangels, and the god. How is Kane an archangel? And here was where he started to lose me. That's the problem with conspiracy theorists, they always have to take things one step too far. Like, big surprise you don't know where the mob boss and a rich executive and a governor are doing at any given night. And there's no reason to wrap Kane Shea into this except the clear and obvious grudge you have towards him. Of course, it had to be all the work of a single omnipotent god. It was the sort of thinking that made the whole idea look stupid. Meanwhile, the devil did have a very salient point buried in there. There were clear contradictions between the big powers in Panthea. The issue was assuming that it was one single well thought out web. Life's too messy for that. More likely, these contradictions the devil was seeing were the result of individual incidents, unseen causes and effects, and personal decisions. Pinning it all on these effects on a single cause was a hollow attempt to try and simplify things in a digestible way. Hopefully with this explanation, you'll start to see where I'm coming from. From there, we can begin to work on our next steps. I eagerly await your response. The devil. Alright, well, I had to keep the dialogue going. Let's see here. Deary me, devil. I never really looked at it that way. However, everything you said matches my information. I'm surprised I didn't put things together like you have. I'm surprised more people haven't rejected this clashing factions view very clearly being propped up as a sham. If you actually looked at who benefits, it's clear that each of these groups stand to gain something from the other. It's simple globalization. Sometimes life is a zero-sum game, but more often than not, it isn't. Working with others is often the best way to get what you want. It's like that old childhood moral of the true power is teamwork, taken to its logical and darkest extreme. Whether they stand united, they all stand to gain, while the rest of us lose out. It's clear to me now, so I guess my next question is pretty obvious. Who is the god? Aja? Jinn. I mean, to control these factions, you have to be pretty influential, right? I can't imagine that the angels, as you put it, will bow to just some nobody. So then, who do you think's pulling the strings? Interested to hear your thoughts on this. Olaf. Jinn, which is Kane Shea. Ancient. Alrighty then, back to Kamapa. And like clockwork, Kara had sent a response. I was really getting into the rhythm of switching between the simultaneous back and forth rallies. It was just an advanced form of swapping between personas. So what did Kara have to say? Oh wow, great idea. Why didn't I think of that? Okay, well, no need to get that mean about it. I already said you'd probably already thought of it. Forget it, just keep reading. Obviously I'd like to get my hands on that laptop. If I did, cracking it open would be child's play. Art isn't some technical whiz. Probably has super bare-bone digital security. And the stuff on that computer would definitely put him away. Or failing that, do damage to him. At the very least, it'd make Odin reconsider his faith in art. There's one major problem in that sentiment. I'd have to get my hands on the laptop. Say what you will about Art, but he's really anal about security. Especially on that floor. I could get the laptop, sure, but getting it out? Not a chance in hell. Not without some serious bribery or conspiracy or whatever. And I not the slightest idea on how to start. Should Kara really be telling me all of this? Well, in fairness to her, she probably thought me as a void. As far as she was concerned, I had no dog in this race. Still, it was an unnecessary risk on her end. Spoke to a general attitude of carelessness on her part. Here's the funny thing about the whole thing. I've actually got a pretty good idea of how I could get the data out of the building. It's a really solid plan in my opinion. It definitely work. Problem is, it'd be a two-person job, meaning that I'd need a partner for it to work. It'd need to be someone at the company, mind you. Anybody would do. That's not the only issue. they figured out the data was stolen, which they very well could, they'd be able to narrow it down to the people with a certain clearance level. Not too many people that have my level. Then they'd look at visitors to the Olimpo main building. If anyone affiliated with me came by during that time, there'd be curtains for me. They'd put 2 and 2 together, and I mean it. Art is serious about this shit. I've heard rumors he's got a personal investigative team. And for that data, and for data that'd put him behind bars, he'd pull out all the stops. Thoroughly vet everybody. Anyone close enough to me that would help with something like this would be figured out. That right there is the final issue. I need the help of someone close to me. I need help to commit a serious crime. If I was caught, I wouldn't get the book thrown at me. I'd get it launched at me from a pitching machine. It'd be a bad deal. And I think I'd be willing to take that risk. I'm fed up with enough with this shit to go for it. But getting another person involved? I don't know. I don't think I could risk it. I don't want to bring someone down with me. So, TLDR, I'd love to steal their laptop. But right now, it just doesn't look possible. I read Kara's message a total of 4 times. Then I thought really hard. This was a bad idea, most certainly. A really, really bad idea. Or was it? Fuck it. Let's just throw it out there. So to pull off this heist, you need the aid of somebody you're not affiliated with. Somebody there's no way they could connect you to. Somebody who wouldn't feel bad about getting involved. Somebody crazy enough to try a caper like this, no promise of a tangible reward for their help. That's a pretty tough recipe. But if you really want to take a shot at Olimpo, and you're willing to get your hands dirty, take real risks, why not recruit me? Hey, we got a silver key. Oh man, what a scene. So much to discuss, huh? Well, let's get the bet out of the way first. You knew Miss Tucker was genuine. Bully for you. You have your rightfully won chips. Alright, now that that's out of the way, I've got to go... What? Ugh, this is awkward. I actually have to dip for a bit. Something needs my attention. You can go on without me though. Don't worry, I'll catch up to you soon. It'll be fine. Alright, we got a silver key, so I guess that means... Ooh. Yeah, I'm calling it. We're going back to Val's. We're going back to Val's in the next one. Because that was my second favourite so far, Val's one. Actually, I really like Devon's one too. Devon's one ended up being really good too. Mercury and Devon's. And they were inextricably linked as well. But, very cool. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Thanks for watching. Thanks for sticking out for me, and I'll see you in the next one.